to record. We can start. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us for EP panel number 6. Today with us we've got Mac10, JK Ray. Is that how you say it? JK Ray.
Yep.
Steelhead, Pavel, and Rarity. So I've essentially provided each nominee a list of questions. There's about 4 of them. Late last night, so that they're not like, so they have a little bit of a heads up. These questions are sort of putting sort of theoretical scenarios and for the group to sort of hopefully brainstorm and work through together. So we'll start with an easy one. It's not one of those sort of hypothetical scenarios, but I think it's something that is like a pretty key in sort of I guess the mandate of being an EP. So first question is, and we'll just go like one by one, but just reiterate again your time commitment in hours to Echelon duties if you were to become an EP. We'll start with Mac 10.
Yeah, currently no affiliations, no employment at this moment in time. So if elected EP, it'd be 40 hours plus, but usually pretty hard worker. So I'll be doing what I need to do to get the job done. So probably be doing full time and some.
Perfect. JK.
Yeah, of course. So it sounds like I might be one of the odd men out here with just having a normal day job, but I don't intend to have that really affect my abilities to put time towards Echelon. In terms of hours specifically, and I know the minimum, I guess, that was floated is kind of 20 plus, but then there was speculation over it. Should that be the minimum? It's, little discussion, but yeah, in terms of hours, 20 to 30 plus, I don't have any issues with that. Of course, I already talked with my wife and, kind of detailed everything with her that I had planned for this. And, if I'm elected, I don't foresee that as being a barrier.
Great. Okay, Steelhead.
Hey, yeah. As I think I mentioned in my resume online, I'd expect to be on more of a full-time commitment. I do currently have a job, so there'd be a transition period, but I think that overlaps well with an onboarding period. But eventually, within a month, moving to 40 plus hours a week would be my plan.
Great. Rarity?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I think, first of all, not to be a broken record, but I think it's important to restate that I think measuring contributions in an hourly format is not a good indicator of value. But that said, I am working at Paragon's DAO, and I do a minimal commitment for consulting at a tech firm. I think in terms of current allocation of time, I'd be able to comfortably commit 20 plus hours. More than likely, similar to Steelhead, that would come with a transition period of me stopping consulting as I would transition into an EP role, hopefully.
Great. Pavel?
Yeah, I do have a day job. It's not time-based. I'm a contractor. Everything for me is deliverables based, so I can put in as much time or as little time as I need to for my day job. So I don't have any problem hitting 20 hours plus, 40 hours plus, as much time as I need to put in. Obviously, as an EP, I would be backing off stuff I do as like a mod because I already fulfill that level of commitment to doing things for Parallel publicly and behind the scenes. So I would just make that transition fairly quickly.
Great. Okay, on to the next question. So this is one of those scenario questions. To set the stage, you are all EPs. The TCG is a wild success, and so due to the scaling user base, you discover that the gameplay pool is slowly in decline. Other options can be explored, but the two that are currently on the table is you either have to cut lineage emissions to masterpiece holders or cut sinks from CD holders. Debate and resolve this issue collectively. Let's say for discussion purposes, you have to find 1% somewhere. You have 20 minutes for this sort of scenario. Opening it up to you guys.
I just wanted clarification on that question. Like, it says other options can be explored, but at this moment, just ignore those options, or
no. You can, as a group, collectively come to another resolution if you want. So you can propose something different. But these are two to get the conversation started. Essentially, if the gameplay pool is getting in decline, let's say that you can't reduce the emissions from the gameplay pool because that might create like a negative feedback loop. So you are essentially trying to find some sort of sync percentage to ramp up to put back into the gameplay pool. Does that sort of clarify things? So you have to decide as a group where that, let's say, 1% is coming from.
Thank you.
So I thought maybe as a group we could quick establish a brief bit of structure. Maybe that'd help with the conversation. What if we just went around, kind of did, like what the EPs did, give a quick 2-minute thought summary on key points, and then we maybe give some feedback on those thoughts and points and try to, debate a little bit and then maybe offer resolution. Does that sound okay to the rest of the team here?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Who wants to kick it off?
Do you want to take those reins, Steele, or I could go ahead if you guys want?
No, go for it, please.
Yeah. If we just to kind of kick off and start the conversation, obviously we could explore a bunch of options, but if we're looking at those two at this moment, that's kind of where we came down to. I'd assume that first, catalyst drives would probably be able to make a larger impact. They do have quite a large percentage of all sinks. So whereas masterpieces are only getting a cut of the lineage emissions, but catalyst drives, they are getting 3% of all prime emissions. So generally, I'm a fan of looking kind of a fairness and slashing all emissions across all assets to kind of in a equally weighted manner. But if I don't have a catalyst drive, so I'd say slash catalyst drives. But jokes aside, I think that would be one of the reasons why I do the CD, is just because it is a larger percentage. But ultimately, I'd love to, like I said, more of a weighted approach and look at all emissions and find a way to kind of take a little piece off of everybody, kind of like a slashing.
Yeah, Mac, I think your point around needing to kind of assess the problem space with more granularity is an important one to set the stage. And I think there's a healthy amount of due diligence needed to understand general throughput from all sinks and what the allocation is to the various assets. I think there's a lot of maybe more fine-grained approaches in terms of tweaking maybe the lineage sync emissions as they relate to CDs to preserve kind of the uniqueness of assets. So masterpieces might only be the only assets that maybe benefit from the lineage sync versus prime sets and CDs maybe still benefit from others. So I think there's a more fine-grained approach that we could potentially assess with some more figures.
I think it's also worth considering a couple other things outside of the, how it could affect the sinks or emissions. 150 catalyst drives, significantly more masterpiece, in terms of the holders. If we go one way or the other, what is the feedback going to be? What is the effect going to be? Is this kind of a sacrifice one to save the lives of thousands scenario where we just go with the catalyst drive because maybe technically it affects less holders and potentially has the greater weight, or do we find some happy medium in between the two? But I definitely think it's worth considering the feedback from each aspect as well, not just the technical side.
Pavel, you want to go, or you want to go last?
Oh, yeah, I can go. We kind of briefly touched on the idea of getting more data and assessment, and I think that anytime you're going to make a kind of a change to the tokenomics, and the velocity of the ecosystem, data modeling is going to have to happen. So maybe we, pull in the rocket scientist from the End Capital and have him come back and consult with this. But it's probably one of those things where this actually sounds like something that we come up with a variety of solutions, and that we actually ask how the community feels. Me not having a CD or an MP of any kind, it's easy for me to just go, yeah, we can cut it, because it's not affecting my bottom line, but it is going to affect somebody else's bottom line. So something like modeling to see what's going to cause the least amount of harm to any given sync flow, or even just between these two options, is probably going to be kind of the optimal path. But I would also suggest maybe instead of cutting, we maybe try to think of brainstorm potentially a new sync that could just be a new revenue stream, that we then funnel that sync back into the player pool. Just give it another way to replenish if there's a way to increase velocity versus decreasing payout to the holders of assets in the system.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think for ourselves, like if we're looking to slash anybody's streams, we should also be looking at Echelon itself, like what percentage we're bringing in, and all options should definitely be on the table.
Yeah, maybe if I can jump in to share a couple thoughts. I think everybody, I think people bring different perspectives. I think I kind of shared a lot of them. Probably the initial kind of thought that I'd say, if this was a real conversation, would be like, what are the other options? We should explore those first and most thoroughly. More data, looking at different ways to do it. Slash and burn. We've made promises to some degree to those holders and to those community members. So, integrity means trying to maintain them if at all possible. And I think the other piece is not just kind of trying to solve this ourselves, thinking that, this is a community-led project. So bring in stakeholders of those assets, share the information that we can share, and really try to consult together and with those who are impacted, and try to really show the case, as everybody's saying. How do you model it? How do you know? Like all analogies, they break down at some point. And so this kind of example, there's not enough information to give really substantive debate. But what are the other options? What's breaking? Like scaling. Why is it not scaling? Aren't things dynamically repriced? And Pavel brought up, adding a sync for gameplay exclusively, which makes a lot of sense, which I hadn't thought of. So anyway, so that, I think that to the group here, there's the feedback portion. Now the deliberation portion, right? Pavel, you brought up another sync. I mean, I would contend that would be the first and foremost thing to do, or maybe segmenting some of the sync revenues, as Brady said, in addition, if that was deemed fair by stakeholders. But what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, it feels like there's kind of three vectors for us to kind of chase. There's, in general, it's velocity, but it's inputs, it's constricting or kind of throttling where we send those emissions. And I think there's potentially a third, which is kind of time weighting things. So per Pavel's suggestion, if there's some sort of sync, or maybe we actually go after another title to onboard to increase kind of velocity and inflow of liquidity, there's maybe some solutions to kind of amortize future emissions into like a contract to stand up a growth objective or a growth project of sort. So like a CD or an MP would take a short-term cut to realize longer-term benefits. Just options.
Yeah, that's interesting. My immediate, I'd be curious to what other people think. Reaction to adding titles and game players, wouldn't that just exacerbate the issue further? So that would be my only comment on those three items.
I think it's worth considering. Oh, sorry, Matt. You want to go?
I was just going to iterate. I think Rarity brought up a pretty good point. Is what was your final point there, Rarity? Yeah, is just like not implementing a band-aid solution and actually taking a look at holistically like what is causing this issue, and make sure that, like, if we cut, and let's just say we do decide just magic wand that we cut CD emissions by 1%, is that going to be a good long-term solution versus kind of, is it just a band-aid solution? We're not fixing the root issue here. How much time do we have left, Meta, so we can resolve this issue?
You have like
10 minutes
2 minutes.
roughly. Is it 20-minute or 10-minute segment?
It was 20 minutes, but like it sounds like you guys are getting somewhere. So like 2 to 5 minutes. I mean, I'm flexible.
So I think that, to Steelhead's point, it might make sense to utilize the community in this, not only to get feedback from them, maybe the holders themselves, but also, whether that is utilizing someone that can run a model, like in terms of the usage and if the pool is declining, at what rate is that occurring? Is this a scenario where an immediate cut of either of these solutions, lumps the entire amount or a future amount into that new pool? Or is this something where we could maybe cherry pick from both sides and not do a complete cut of one or the other, but do a gradual cut and then filter that into the pool? I know that's kind of introducing a new side to it, but was just trying to think of other alternatives. At the end of the day, I think if we have to decide, my gut at the beginning was cutting the CD, but yeah.
Yeah. Like I was thinking about this now, like it's a circular kind of economy, right? So it'd be interesting to see like which pools are growing. Like I think there's kind of a dynamic balance you want to have. Just because the gameplay pool is declining doesn't mean it's in danger per se. I think that there's always like kind of a floor, like what the runway of that pool is. Will expect some pools to decline a bit over time and kind of then be replenished, kind of like that ebb and flow. But I would like to kind of look at more like which pools are growing significantly faster, and kind of look at it from that perspective as well. Yeah, that's about it.
Pablo, Reard, if you have anything to add, otherwise.
No, I actually, I think we covered it pretty well, and I would just be, chewing time just to hear myself talk.
Yeah. So maybe to tie it out, the resolution would be gather more data, model more data and inputs, get feedback from the community, particularly those stakeholders of those assets, and try to find alternatives to this kind of binary cut what's already in the ecosystem, trying to buff instead of nerf, as Mr. Gahn likes to say.
Just for fun, should we go around and say, if you had to pick between one or two? Between MP and CD?
Sure, that sounds fun.
All right.
All right, I will go first. Obviously, it would be, in my opinion, Catalyst drives, just because I look at it as like they have such a large percentage of the sinks compared to MP, and like they encompass all sinks. So, albeit hitting them with 1% would be 1/3 of their stink emissions. It would still leave them with still somewhat of a healthy reward coming towards them. But if you were to cut that straight from masterpiece lineages, it's just a larger percentage of their pool, and they don't get all syncs, whereas CD gets all syncs, right?
No one else on. Oh, Pavel unmuted. You go, Pavel.
Oh, yeah. I would also just cut. I would, if I had gun to my head, I would cut CDs. At most, there's 150 CD holders, and that is a much smaller angry mob than if we cut it from every single MP holder. And
agreed.
Affecting the last amount of people is what the triage comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we're putting it down, I think Meta said like 1%, right? To reclaim 1%, like CDs get 3, so reduce it to 2 would make sense. I also think that CD holders are probably the most value aligned with ecosystem health. Gameplay pool crashing is big deal. So that would be something to engage, and I would, for the sake of argument, not saying nerf CDs right now, but yeah, that would be, I'd agree.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't like when people give non-answers. So I guess I have to give one. I do hold both. Just FYI. I think in general, I think it's not clear yet what actual percentage allocation MPs get. I think that's still an unknown. I think there's a lot of data that would need to be modeled. But I think ultimately, yes, it's true. I think CDs are getting a larger funnel of emissions, and more than likely that would be an easier area to carve from.
Great, guys. There's no right answer. It's obviously theoretical, but I think the purpose of it was to sort of see how you guys approached problem solving together. And I think there's some really good thoughts there. So nice job. Okay, we'll move on to number 3. Again, you are all EPs. You're preparing a pitch presentation for Prime and Echelon to another game studio. Brainstorm some selling points for why a studio should partner with Echelon and use Prime in their ecosystem. At the end of the brainstorming session, as a group, summarize, I guess, your best pitch in a single sentence. 20 minutes.
All right, guys. I guess we're pitching to CryptoZoo, so I think it Prime and Prime, it fits together. No, I mean, jokes aside, who wants to take this one? Stila, you want to kind of be the kickstarter?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could probably go through the same type of thing, right? So what are like the 2 to 3 value points that each of us see? See where there's crossover, convergence, divergence, and work it out. I mean, that is how I would work with you guys if we were making a pitch or suggest. So unless someone has another angle, we could just go round robin it again and then kind of iterate off of there.
I'm happy to jump in and go first then. I like that.
Go for it, Eric.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go.
I guess the way I kind of think about the pitch is it kind of falls in maybe like 3 buckets of value propositions or distinct value propositions. There's the user base. I think all of us, obviously it's very attractive to kind of come in as a new title and plug and play into an existing thriving community and set of eyeballs. I think the next bucket would be like more like service oriented. And I think some of the EPs have touched on this previously in terms of that being a distinct value prop of tokenomics experience, game design experience, et cetera, that the EPs and potentially even Parallel could offer on a consultative basis. And then I think the third bucket I generally think of is obviously the technology stack that Echelon has started to kind of bake out, whether that's the actual like Prime token or Inbox or Prisys or some of the Parallel IP. So I don't know. Those are 3 kind of distinct buckets. I don't know if anybody feels that there's additional or ways to kind of deepen the value or the pitch of one of those.
Rare, would you just recap like each one? So you said user experience or user base,
user-based services and tech.
Mm-hmm. Tech, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks. I'm unmuted. I'll join. I mean, it's funny. I wrote down very similar ideas to what you kind of the 2-3 points that you did, Rarity. Kind of battle tested, audited, proven kind of tech, smart contract systems. tons of IP involved and legal and research done. So you're getting a head start. And then user base. Yeah, I think we've got a passionate and committed user base that would be appealing to any studio. And that's a high selling upside. And also the service-oriented component, I put more along the line of experience, right? Which Parallel and Echelon as partners have been doing this, right? We're pioneering it in a real way. So I think that experience and insight towards that service-oriented angle really should be a really high sell proposition. But those are my kind of 3 points.
I think a couple things to focus on, these might overlap a little bit with what Rarity and Steel have just touched on, but the foundation that Echelon has in place already, to me, is a key point that needs to be highlighted. Clearly, bringing another studio on board and then not having to worry with the tokenomic side of things, the syncs lined up. Ideally, we're displaying to them how we have basically that side of the house squared away. It would really just be understanding what they're trying to accomplish by with their game, and then how we can facilitate that. I think the second thing is focusing on the community as a whole, and use Parallel as an example. We could very clearly detail the relationship that we have built with that team, with their user base, and use that as a launching point for, this is potentially what we could build out for you. This is how we could foster growth of the game, of the community. And then lastly, I think, don't undersell ourselves as EPs. Say, we're a package deal with Echelon. Sure, the framework is already there. The tokenomics are there. But us as EPs can be a resource for this as well. Whoever's elected, there's going to be a broad swath of knowledge base and resource for this potential new studio that decides to come on board.
Yep. Are you wanting to go ahead, Pavel?
Oh, I can, or if you already, I'm sorry, if you're already unmuted, you can go. I didn't see.
Just wrong with it. He's muted.
Okay. So I would start by I would pitch them that Prime is the V-Bucks of Web3 gaming. Something that's become very attractive in gaming over like the past 2 decades is games that have their own kind of working economies. Tend to do very well, and I think we would pitch them on a point of, you have a ready bake economy built in through the Echelon ecosystem, which is something that a lot of games are in just traditional games are trying to implement themselves. I would also highlight the fact that and assuming this is sometime out in the future, Echelon has accelerated and bootstrapped a lot of community-driven tooling and resources that would also be available to the game that wanted to come into this ecosystem. I think you see it in trad gaming or Web2 gaming, however you want to put it, that you get community resources, but I think the studios that allow like modding or whatever, it's mostly a kind of a passive type deal where it's like, okay, sure, yeah, you can have access to this, or we'll create a mod market, but they're not actively accelerating the development of the community builders, which Echelon will want to do and is part of its mission to do. So I would have that, and then I would also give the bullet point of, there is there's something special about what's being going on right now in the Echelon community with Parallel, and it's that the dark horse is composability. They're going to come into a system where you'll have like Parallel will make its next game, and then its next game, or however many, but we're going to have the composability of assets that just as far as I'm aware don't really exist anywhere else and in any meaningful sense. But if you have a model to show them that it's successful and demonstrated, you can say, come into the Echelon ecosystem. We can help you copy this model because composability of digital assets is really successful. Ergo, look at this parallel success. And those would be kind of like my 3 selling points that I'd use.
Mm-hmm. Good points. For myself, I think really kind of focusing on the benefits and what benefits they have for implementing, adopting this type of model is pretty important. It always just depends on the game, what they're trying to accomplish. If they just want kind of like their own V-Bucks and to leverage Prime, I think that's different than a game that kind of wants to build more engagement. I think one of the things we've seen with the Web3 gaming space is that, this kind of ownership and it kind of creates more engagement, being able to kind of help provide input as a regular player and vote on changes and things like that is kind of that major benefit. It's just a different paradigm shift from traditional games. I think there are games in the past that have kind of somewhat done this. We've seen EVE Online has a very strong community that continues to engage and has a very deep economy, and I think that when you look at that, that benefit there is like a lot of people feel like the ownership and that things are earned over time. But for me, it'd be really kind of just better understand what the game was, to have a stronger pitch. But that's a sales guy in me. But I think most of you guys brought up most of the points I'd written down, which is like you get you're already getting an existing user base that's so you're getting that attention right away. So quick and easy marketing. With the kind of ownership and of assets and governance, you get that more engagement. And obviously, Jay Cray hit the most important part is don't sell ourselves short here. I think like you're getting a large swath of services as well, and expertise, and that we'd be EPs in the community are some of the biggest assets that we have. So
I think one additional point that there were undertones of, I think, in some of the other responses. So I think user-based services and tech were all kind of thoroughly covered, but I think another aspect of government, an important one, where I think we've all kind of alluded to, hey, you're coming into Echelon's ecosystem or Parallel's ecosystem. But I think a huge selling point is also like by coming into this ecosystem and bringing your community or your eventual community, you now will have a voice in shaping the direction of where things go. I think that's a very unique and interesting selling point as well.
Yeah, that's great. So the final things, we have to bring it down to a single sentence, right? Is that right, Meta?
Yeah, one sentence. What is the pitch?
Okay. Maybe I'll toss one out if you guys want to iterate on it. Echelon offers game studios a way to jumpstart their user base, in-game economy, and entire gaming infrastructure to kind of support a thriving gaming community. Something along those lines, right? I mean, single sentence, few commas. What do you guys think?
What were those pieces that you hit on, Steele?
Well, I think the concept of jump starting, like really what you're getting is a huge leg up, right, with Echelon, right? And in the Web3 gaming space or gaming space in general. And what are those advantages? We're talking about infrastructure and tools to establish a game economy, both in and out of game, a user base, and really robust tooling and infrastructure. And the community governance aspect, which I think falls under infrastructure, but Rarity's teasing out. So I'm not quite sure. JK, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, no, I think that it could sound something like, feel free to wordsmith any of this, of course, but with Echelon Foundation, you're getting an established infrastructure, a dedicated user base, and most importantly, resources to help execute and deliver the vision of your game.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, kind of looking at that benefit is that these guys will tend to be game developers first, and partnering with Echelon will allow you to focus on what you do best. And by leveraging, existing infrastructure, you can step on the shoulder of giants and kind of jumpstart your Web3 game and focus on what you do best, which is game development versus, them having to focus on tokenomics and things that kind of really slow down game development. I'm sure probably some of the parallel guys can say that if they could just focus full time on the game, that'd be great. And I think like a new game coming into that, it's just you don't need to cut the path through the forest, right? So I think that's something I would kind of really focus on. So. Does anybody want to write in like one of the text chats so we could get just like a 1-sentence pitch, like prime time with Prime?
No, I think you guys have distilled things pretty well. I guess I would kind of just top it off with, I think, something like just generally plug and played, like shared gaming ecosystem. I think indexing on the fact that it's out of the box and then it's a shared, and I think maybe like the ecosystem kind of is encapsulating of all those various sub points that we made.
Yeah, well put.
Good stuff, guys. No right answers, but I really liked hearing how you guys sort of pieced together or picked apart the sort of ask and sort of came to a good resolution of how you would sell Echelon to someone. So good stuff. Okay, last question. So you've actually convinced me I'm the new game studio, and you've convinced me like that I will join and be part of the Echelon umbrella. Not all of you are convinced that the game that I'm developing is going to be a hit. So Steelhead and Rarity think that this game that I've created is going to be a smash hit. Mac, Pavel, and JK sort of are lukewarm on the game that I'm building. And unfortunately, my ask to come into the ecosystem is quite high. So it would require you to spend the last of the Echelon treasury and potentially circumventing or slashing EP salaries for the next 6 months. What levers do you pull? What avenues do you take? How do you, half of you are sort of pro this game, half of you are in between, and it has personal sort of impacts to you guys collectively. So what approach do you guys take? This is the final question for 20 minutes.
I have some initial thoughts. So my initial thought is that if we're in a position where the last of the treasury is either going to only pay our salaries for 6 months, or give us another game coming into the ecosystem, which if we're being responsible about doling out the treasury, it wouldn't even be fully accelerating them in. It's spending the last of the treasury for them to get their first milestone deliverable. We messed up somewhere if it's come down to that hard. And I would immediately be making the case that probably shouldn't be either. We should forego pay and not accelerate them, because we're in a bind. And I don't know how I'm having trouble getting past the like how bad of a situation we'd be in to just be in this scenario. So I've got to get past that. But I mean, I to try to go maybe in a more positive route, I guess the first lever I would pull would be trying to help them do an independent capital raise, or maybe tapping some of the other game studios that have already made it into the ecosystem and see if maybe they have an interest in making an investment in Meta's janitor simulator game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess for sake of discussion, I'll just pretend that we're not all horribly culpably responsible for running the treasury down hard. The one, and obviously there's a lot of different expenses that the treasury is used for, right? To run the foundation, run everything. So burn rate could be high, but hopefully this project would fit within that. So I think the question is always like, is it on mission? Is it within strategy? Those things should be evaluated. But if we're just questions about levers, right? I kind of thought of three. Pavel, you hit one. The networking connections of the community and the EPs. Like, we're not in this alone. We're we're a catalyst and provider. We're not the be all end all of Web3 gaming or gaming at large. So how do we leverage that? Another thing is we are a foundation, and so there's my knowledge, and someone might kill me for this, but there's no reason why you couldn't try to do a community-funded initiative. If this is high enough priority and has enough value and upside to Echelon, which is therefore an extension of the Echelon community to CPs, a community ask or gift could be considered as raised, or even a matching type of program to both slow burn rates and funds. And this probably should be considered at large for new gaming projects anyways down the line. So I think those are a couple options, networking, facilitating, potentially thinking outside the box, fundraising from a community-oriented perspective outside of treasury and allocations. But then, I think if you're down to rock and hard place for going, if this is what it takes to get Echelon back on track, then I'd seriously consider foregoing and probably opt for that if needed. There's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think Pavel kind of hit my initial thought there. Was like, once even bringing on this game, if that was gonna, I take the treasury down to 0, I think that puts the foundation in kind of a vulnerable spot. That means we've probably failed somewhere along the lines. Sorry, and maybe we should slash more CD emissions. But no, I think you guys kind of also hit on my other point, which was going to be that, like, it is a community-based. We do have a large community, and taking this down to a community vote or allowing kind of the community to kind of pool prime for this project, letting the community decide. I think that you guys, we have like some of you guys have some strong affiliations with PDAO and capital and such, and kind of leveraging those relationships and assisting in bringing in that capital. But at the same time, we aren't a VC studio. These are grants. And generally in grant programs, you kind of become a partner, or in some, at least. I know in research grants, this is somewhat different. But it shouldn't be kind of the failure of success. So I think like we should be finding potentially other solutions where we can help and collaborate with them and kind of become that partner. I think that comes down to the benefits of partnering with Echelon, is not just you get free prime or some grants, but what other benefits we bring, and kind of obviously, how is that grant given out over time? That's something I brought up in one of the recent proposals, is just kind of better understanding the governance and not putting them. How is that all done? But yeah, I just really go down to if it was to that case, yes, I would forego salary. I think that without Echelon and the foundation at that point, we're pretty much screwed anyway. So might as well try and save it and breathe life back into our treasury. I think that's kind of the main goal there. Is it's not just a charity. Like, our goal is to continue to grow and maintain that treasury. So we should really kind of focus on that versus kind of our own skin. So just to recap, I would definitely be looking at leveraging partners, as Pavel said, also kind of maybe seeing if we can help leverage our existing networking partners and VCs to see if they want to contribute and help build towards this grant, and as well as kind of offering the community the ability to vote or commit their prime as well to games that will help that they, if they see that, it would be a hit as well. And I think Janitor Simulator would be great.
So for this Janitor Simulator, I'm assuming that we've already seen a demo, and while I might not be gung ho about the success of it. I would not risk the treasury going to zero, really, in any scenario. I, again, agree with pretty much what everyone said of kind of whatever state got us to that point. But if we were there for whatever reason, foregoing, I don't plan. This isn't for the money for me. This is about the Prime ecosystem and what it can offer to Web3 gaming as a whole. So that's an easy one for me. If I had to choose, it would certainly be preserving what is in the treasury by whatever means necessary. One other option that I was just thinking of, and this is, outside of all the other great feedback and offerings in terms of partnering or, getting community assistance, but, I don't know, how much this potentially could affect the ecosystem and tokenomics that are already in place, but it might be worth considering a sync of some sort that goes into a fund specifically for this. Doesn't have to be big. It could just be a rainy day scenario where, X number goes to this sync, and then in the event that we have a game that we really like, some don't, we're trying to decide what do we do. And here we are, we found ourselves in a situation where we have to make a tough call. Then we have some funds somewhere specifically for this scenario. I'm very big on contingency planning. And if we can't always account for things, of course, but if we at least have that in the back of our mind early on, then that may be a way to avoid being in a scenario like this in the future.
Yeah, I think you guys covered the topic pretty thoroughly. I'd agree with initial sentiments that we're in a pretty horrific spot if we're coming to this backs against the wall type of scenario. And quite honestly, I think that the current cohort of EPs should come up for re-election before making such a decision again. I think additionally, like if we're looking at this scenario, for the sake of this scenario, I think if our salaries for 6 months can cover this grant, the overall amount isn't that large. And I think per some of the other recommendations, I think there's a lot of potential alternatives out there for raising that capital, whether that's helping in terms of helping that title kind of find a private round or a raise. I think actually Steele referenced a match program for the community or other titles. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think also alternatively, I think looking at adjusting the sync schedule to kind of amortize that grant across time and the community could be an interesting approach as well. Obviously, that would require community involvement in a much broader vote, and once again, some more modeling. But I think there's a number of solutions that would allow you to kind of distribute that upfront cost over a period of time, if this was something that felt vindicated by the benefits that the game was bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think we all agree that at this point in time, like if we can't afford it, we can't afford it, and we're always happy to help in other ways. But at the end of the day, like if that's the case, if the foundation's getting that low, I think sometimes you have to make those decisions. But also, it doesn't mean that relationship is cut out completely. Could always help them continue with development and such with and things without providing grants, and still kind of continue to build up that partnership. But at the end of the day, it's like one of those things, like shouldn't be spending what you can't afford to spend. And then if we're in that situation, we should already be looking at cutting EP salaries before even having that discussion as well. Sorry, Meta. I know you're really hoping to get this game up for 10 million copies, but we're here to help you with anything.
Janitor Jim, you guys don't know. It's going to be the next. It's going to be the next. I don't know. NBA Jam. You guys really missed the ball, and you should have just went full throttle on my sweet game. No, I'm just kidding. The sort of resolution or the thinking process is great. I think that there's obviously many solutions to this, and yeah, if things were that dire, there's probably some things that happened poorly prior to that. So good sort of analysis, and I really enjoyed hearing how you guys picked apart again the issues.
I think,
all right.
I was going to just add to, I think like that brings up like a lot of like, we talk about like what is the value proposition of Echelon, and like I think we all kind of glanced over it or didn't even really talk about it, but like this idea that like we're here as a partner, we can help you get that funding. Like we are usually when WoW talks about like YC, right? Like this YC grant kind of program in that vein, you would be like helping them get introductions to VCs, and maybe in that point, just like any kind of grant program stuff, we do take a piece, we do whatever it may be, but that's a huge value prop if that's the case. Like you're getting access to our community, our VCs, and like any game that we partner with, we should be going and selling out to the community and our partners as well. Like, hey, this is why you should be involved as well. And I think that's something that's kind of been glanced over, but I think it would be a huge that to myself would be like amazing. And I guess WoW kind of I like his YC program to that effect as well. I think it's kind of a good idea. But yeah, that was my point.
Great. All right.
Something that came up in the chat, Meta. I mean, I think we probably we could also advise you to pivot from janitor simulator to a dump truck ass simulator.
Is that the de rigueur game type?
Yeah,
dump truck ass. Yeah. Okay. All right.
All in with the treasury.
Dump truck ass.
I'll consider it as long as it's we're hitting top AUM. Okay, so thanks so much, guys. This is obviously like a new format. There was a list of questions, and I think yesterday's panel covered a lot of the good ones. There's more circling in, so I think between Buse and Falls panels, like some of those questions will come through. So I thought I'd just sort of spend some time and come up with some really weird questions to ask you guys. And sorry, you guys are a bit of guinea pigs if this panel approach actually would work. But I thought some of the responses and the conversations were really, really good. So thanks for humoring me. I guess to sort of end this off, maybe similar to Cole's, just sort of like as you're sort of signing off, maybe each of you could just sort of say like one thing about your why someone should vote for you as a final sign off before we go into the vote process. So whoever wants to jump in and say any final words, that'd be great.
Famous last words. Thanks, Nan. I guess I'll go since looks like I left myself unmuted. You should vote for Pavel because I think I'm competent enough to do the job. I think I've already proven that I'm willing to stick with the ecosystem in general through thick and thin. Throw a lot of effort in there. Helping parallel in a realistically and for free. There's some fringe benefits like being able to be an alpha tester, but essentially all the effort and working with the community that's been done has been done for the love of the IP and belief in the vision for the future. And
did you cut out there, Pavel, or?
Hello?
You might have rugged in the very last couple words that you were going to say, but
yeah. So my earbuds just like died on me. I think that's what it was, because I think it was switching from the earbud mic to the laptop mic. Shoot, I just interrupted my train of thought. But vote early, vote often, vote for Pavel. I know sometimes trying to enforce rules and whatnot, I can be abrasive, but I've always had the idea of what I think is going to be best for the community and the ecosystem at heart. And I've dedicated a lot of time already, and whether or not somebody does vote for me, I'm going to be here for the next year anyway. But I think letting me work in capacity with Echelon is going to be one of the most effective and optimal ways you can use my skill and talent stack and passion for what's trying to be accomplished here.
Great, thanks, Pavel. Let's just pick Mac.
Yeah. Hey, my name is Mac 10. Mac 10 for EP. For me, like, I'm running more on the business development aspect of everything. I've already I've been involved in Parallel prior to even the pre-sale, in the sense that I was kind of well aware and speaking with some of the founders about their project, and got pretty excited about it, participated in the pre-sale. And from there, like, I've been working in crypto for over 6 years full time. Sorry, my mic was a little far from my face. But I've been working in crypto for over 6 years full time, and I'm always kind of one of those people who's like to connect people throughout my network, and that's what I've done and will continue to do for Parallel, Echelon, and so on and so forth. And I've already kind of made some connections already that have already benefited Parallel and led to investments and good partnerships. So for myself, that's what I want to continue to do, and I would love to be able to be compensated for that. But obviously, I will continue to support the ecosystem regardless. For myself, I really want to kind of run on that fairness and transparency. I'm not affiliated with anything. I have no conflict of interests. That's really kind of where I'd love to kind of be more of a voice for everybody. My DMs will always be open. Always happy to have a conversation. And so vote Mac10 for EP. I'll be selling shirts as well and pins if anybody wants to support me. That's great. But as I said, I'd just love to continue to utilize my existing network and relationships to continue to benefit Prime and the ecosystem.
Perfect. JK?
Yeah, thanks. So vote for JK Ray. I think what I have to offer is very unique, and my key point that I'm focusing on is the people. I feel like one of the largest glaring issues that people talk about all the time is community. Whether it's standard crypto Twitter or it's gaming or whatever, there is just a huge amount of bad actors and frustration, and we're losing that people aspect. And sure, we're behind keyboards and we might not even know what each other looks like, but making people aware of what our mission statements are and our standards and what we're trying to achieve, to me, is the highest priority that we need to have. And why I'm running for Echelon, I think it's an opportunity to develop the strongest community in Web3, not just gaming, in Web3. How do we do that? We do that with community engagement. We utilize the relationships that we already have. For example, with Parallel, we focus on the people. We focus on how to communicate with them. How do we educate? How do we speak out about accountability and transparency? All these things that aren't occurring in the Web3 space as a whole, or are severely lacking, and people wonder why no one wants to give us the time of day. I definitely see Echelon as something that can be revolutionary, and I'm excited to offer my expertise in these areas to get there. So vote for J.K. Ray.
Thanks, JK. Steelhead?
Thanks, Meta. Yeah, I mean, it's really a privilege to be able to run, have this opportunity, be up here. Thanks for those who are viewing and listening and who will listen to the record. Yeah, I think some of my unique skills are in this need for program development, management, granting processes, things like that. Also working with diverse sets of stakeholders and being empathetic and trying to understand opposing perspectives or diverse perspectives. I work in a global industry, have a lot of it, decent amount of experience. I'm not going to overstate my experience on international travel and engagement. But I think I have a well-rounded set of skills that really can contribute. I've been here for a while. I know most of these people in the audience in one way or another. I would just love to help contribute and drive this forward and work alongside the community, other EPs, and just helping this really become the innovative, groundbreaking, pioneering project that we all know and believe it can be. Thank you.
Great. Rarity, close it off for us here.
All right. Yeah, I guess first and foremost, humbled for an opportunity to run for EP. And thank you all for the consideration. Unfortunately, no fancy taglines here. But I guess to address WoW's question about Discord volume, I focus less on talking and more on doing. I think my platform is widely oriented around community building. And I think the track record kind of speaks for itself in that vein. From being the only EP candidate with any governance proposals to building the most used community tool in the priming to now partnering with Paragons, I think it shows a pretty unrivaled dedication to the space in Echelon. And I think my professional background kind of speaks for itself in support of that. So yeah, thank you for the consideration, and yeah, excited for this process.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I think tomorrow, or maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure when the next panel is, but I think it'll be hosted by, I believe, Bu. But we're getting there. Votes will start, I believe, on Wednesday, I believe. But thank you. We're almost through this process, and hopefully this discussion has allowed you to get to know the speakers on stage. Cheers. Have a good weekend. Talk soon.
Thank you.